One of the reasons I stay in a nice small town like Raipur is that it's one of those places where it is culturally acceptable to sleep off after lunch. So believe me, I want to sleep a little bit more than you really want to relax and put your feet up, but I'll try my best to stay awake. If possible, I'll try to keep you awake also. But main objective is to make sure that I don't go to sleep. Okay, so we have come this far. There are some questions now. Some of you have identified about 8 opportunities. There are some who have identified even more than that, 12. There are some others with 1 or 2 opportunities also. But there's a question over here. If there is more than one opportunity that I am looking at, how do I figure out which one do I go for, right? Obviously, you have some parameters with you which you are going to use, right? Something you wanted to say? Okay. Basically, you have some parameters over there. You know, what is the extent of fit, how many core competencies meet, whether it's an adjacency as well as something which is easy to implement. Again, there will be another thing, whether you like to do something, how much you like to do that particular thing. That's the other thing that you'll be looking at. But there is something else that you have to do also. All of these opportunities, there is money you're going to spend. There is time you're going to invest. And you really don't have the time or the money to do all these things. Otherwise, you'll not be a startup, right? You're a startup, you have limited money, you have limited bandwidth to do these things, and of course, you have limited resources, whether it is humans or any other kind of resource we are talking about. So there has to be a system of prioritizing. For that, you have certain information with you. And the other thing is, there should be an approach which minimizes your effort and your spent on this. Now, lean methodology in the context of startups is something which is now I think all of us are quite familiar with it. Anybody would like to tell me what lean methodology is all about?
In my humble opinion, it would be like a frugal methodology without wasting to reach the optimum possible results. That would be how we should work towards a lean methodology, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Lean methodology is all about frugal. There has been a lot of talk about doing market research. There has been a lot of talk about making sure that you put as much of your best foot forward as you can. But there has also been a philosophy which goes against those premises. What lean methodology says is, one really doesn't know. When one is starting, one starts with a bunch of assumptions. Your idea is to go out there and see whether your assumptions are right. And no amount of market research, no amount of theory will be able to tell you whether those assumptions are right or not. The only way you're going to be able to validate your assumptions is by actually going out to the market. So you go out with what is called a minimum viable product, or the minimum amount or the minimum configuration that you need to be able to collect some market information. And then you see what is the market's reaction to it. And on that basis, you decide what you should be doing and what you should not be doing. So you learn by exploring through a bunch of experiments, figure out what exactly it is that you want to learn from those experiments, have your measurements in place so that you can educate yourself on the basis of those experiments, take those learning and then extend it to your larger organization, try to implement it on a larger scale. So this is primarily what lean methodology is all about. One more of my students started something called Milk Mantra. They have a product which is available even in Bangalore. I don't know how many of you would have tried it. Milky Moo. They come out with packaged milk. Any of you have tried it? Okay. Seen it. Okay, one step done. Now I have to tell him that he's not doing a good job of converting people who see to people who actually try the product. So a little bit about how this guy started. He used to work at the Tatas and really didn't want to continue in the corporate life. He wanted to actually start something of his own. Came back and started very, very punitive conditions were put down in his term sheet. So he really had to make a success out of it, even if he wants to recover his own investment. His first challenge was farmers did not trust him enough to give the milk to him. One is the pricing. The other is the long-term trust that you have. If I give milk to this guy, is he going to be in a position to take milk from us for the next couple of years at least? So those were the questions which came up. So his minimum viable product before he came up with his processing unit was to have a system where he can collect the milk itself, whether his value proposition of giving that 50 paisa extra and not cutting anything for a small drop in fat, whether it is a proposition acceptable to the farmers or not. So the dairy farmers accepted it. So he was actually buying the milk and selling it to others. He was not even keeping it himself. So he was just trying out whether this works or not. Once he had his processing unit ready, then he started selling it to the market. And his first product was actually a home-to-home delivery, because the retailers were not willing to take the risk of milk. Milk is a difficult product to sell. It requires you to have a certain open at a certain time. It requires you to have a certain mindset, and you should be able to get rid of it quick. And the local milk federation have a dedicated bunch of milk sellers already, so it's difficult to break into that. So he started off with home-to-home delivery, knowing very well that this is something that he just wants to see what is the reaction to the milk. There are very strange reactions. The first thing he found out was people don't appreciate pure milk at all. In fact, we have become so attuned to milk which has got a little bit adulteration in it, that pure milk is rejected by the children in the house, it is rejected by the adults in the house. So he actually had to adulterate the milk and bring down the purity a little bit, all on paper, so that the milk is actually acceptable to the households. So the fat percentage is a little lower, the milk solid percentage is a little lower, so that it is acceptable to you and me. So that was one of the biggest learnings he got. But that learning he couldn't have got by conducting a market survey. If you sip milk, half a glass of milk, and it's pure milk, you are going to say, wow. But if you're going to have it on a daily basis for a week, then your stomach is not going to keep up with, I can't have this thing, this is too pure for me. So these are the kind of questions that you cannot answer with a market survey. These are the kind of questions that you actually have to go and find out after having put your product in the market. At this stage now, he's available, Milky Moo, the products are available across 7 states in India. It's also available in Bangalore. And the product that he actually wanted to launch, the product which he thought was the product that he wants to go to the market with, was actually milk with haldi in it. He has finally launched this product, but that is about 4 years after his start. So that is what he had. There are a lot of assumptions he had which had to be cleared out before he actually comes in with the product that he wanted to start off with. So this is milk which is packaged flavored milk, haldi flavor, base of strawberry is there, base of vanilla is there. Also, most of the flavored milk is very high in calories, it is sweetened. So whether you are having a bottle of Coca-Cola or you are having a Tetra Pak of flavored milk, the number of calories is actually the same, sometimes more in the milk than in the Coca-Cola. Only that you get a few more nutrients over here, so it makes more sense to take this. But this milk was one which was lower in calories. So he wanted that product and he didn't get that product anywhere else in the market, and he thought there's a need for it. But he was finally able to launch his product something like 4 years after his initial forays, and a lot of changes. This was not exactly how he wanted to launch it. There are a lot of changes in the way things worked out. So this is what I want to say over here. First, start off with a small thing, see what works, what doesn't work. Even if you have 100 rupees in the bank, do not invest it in your company, all the 100 rupees on day one. Invest 5 rupees, 10 rupees, figure out whether it works, then bring in the other 80, 90 rupees into play. So that is what lean methodology is all about. How does it work for growth? This is actually for growth. It's not for just for a startup. It tells you how to grow. Suppose there are 7, 8 different avenues which are maybe even equally alluring to you, then you need to prioritize. Then you need to use the same lean startup methodology with each of these avenues. So do it fast, do it sequentially, and do one after the other. So once you figure out what works and what does not, then you can probably use that learning and try out the next opportunity. So you have about 7, 8 opportunities with you. You have to prioritize it based on what you feel and again what your paper tells you in terms of how well aligned it is to your overall objectives. And then go ahead and try out what you want to do and how you want to do it. Yeah, please. Exactly. It is not, it's not test marketing, but it is testing the waters. You go out with the full product. You go out with as much, you can say as much as you can afford to invest, but you are prepared to withdraw your product. You are prepared to make changes to it as soon as you realize that there is some learning which you need to incorporate into your product. Groupon started with just mails. It did not start with the website that they have. They were just using MailChimp and sending out mails. So you have various ways in which you can actually do the little product and then get onto the bigger one. Let me give you an example. I'll want your thoughts on it also. One of my students, again, set up this organization called Thick Shake Factory. Rather, set up this business called Thick Shake Factory. They are operating out of Hyderabad. What does it offer? I'm not going to give you prices for saying that it offers thick shakes. It is now in Brigade Road, Bangalore. It is also there in Bombay, in fact. So I'll tell you a little bit about how they started off. And so you'll be able to also tell me. So it started in 2013. This was again a person who wanted to start their own business. Fortunately, unfortunately, worked for TCS for about 1.5 years. There's this new model which I really don't mind anymore. So what happens is, within 6 months, the guys realize that I really don't want to stay in TCS for the rest of my life. If I'm unlucky, I'll stay here for another 6 months. But let me organize my life around the next business that I'm going to do. Let me utilize my downtime in TCS to figure out what my business is, probably even implement it, then only I'll leave. I think it is good. I think TCS is doing a huge amount of service to the Indian ecosystem by subsidizing these entrepreneurs. This incubator system which they are running inadvertently is actually good. TCS does it, Wipro does it, not to that extent, but Infosys also does it. So this is a good incubator system that we have. Let's encourage young entrepreneurs to make use of this ecosystem as much as they can. So they started in 2013. He was still in a job. He quit it at the about end of 2013, second half of 2013, after about 6 months of his launch. What I told him is keep a trigger. So his trigger was the day I sell 100 thick shakes, I'm going to quit TCS. So he had an outlet. He reached 100 on day one. So he changed his goals. The day I'm going to reach 200 thick shakes a day, I'm going to quit. So that happened in about 2 weeks. So he quit. So then what happened is he saw this is a good format and he wanted to expand it. So he expanded to 4 other places also. 5 outlets. The problem he saw, again, it was very organic. The idea was go from 1 to 3 and then go on to more. The problem he saw was there are many, many different opportunities. So what do you think could be the growth opportunities? The one you know is other geographies. And this is something that he has also done. What are the other opportunities you see over here? Other products, for example? Some snacks, yes. Franchisee is a channel. Of course, thank God, money well spent by. What else? Quick snacks. Anything else? What are the other opportunities? Home delivery, so another channel, yes. Merchandising options, different products, yes. What else? So broadly, he had 4 or 5 different alternatives, and let's see how he took these up. One was, he saw that same store growth is not enough. So obviously the answer is that he goes into other snacks, maybe expand the range of products. So those are the kind of things he'll look at. Other thing is, whenever he opened a new store, it was actually giving him footfalls. Anywhere he opened. I mean, literally he was opening anywhere and he was getting it. So geographically, there were 2 things he should be trying out. One is bigger cities, Bangalore and Bombay. This was his first try. This was actually second. The first one he tried out was new channels, franchisee. So he decided to have franchisees. So he appointed 3 franchisees in the city of Hyderabad. That was his first thing. So what happened as a result of that? Easy money. Franchisee fees, he collects some money up front. There is a portion of the revenues he keeps on getting. So he's able to expand the scope of his brand without actually having to make a huge investment. So huge plus. Downside, at some point of time, you're going to come across this person who says that, why do I need to put in 60 ml of mix? Can I do it 50? And then he'll go to, can I do it with 40? And then he'll tell somebody, bolna mat kisi ko. So then when your person goes to visit also, they'll not be able to figure it out. So keeping control over quality is a huge headache. So these 3 are his petri dish. He's still trying to figure out how does he keep quality in these places. There are certain challenges, not necessarily the one which I talked about, but there are challenges and he'll have to overcome them before he's able to take it forward. So 3 and he stopped at that. That's an experiment which he had conducted, not unsuccessful, but the results were not successful enough for him to take it to the next level. So this was a channel innovation. Next is product innovation. He introduced cookies in his outlet. Sales just did not pick up. So he has ditched that. He'll probably introduce something else at a later point of time. He has been very seriously thinking about burgers, because probably the world's most famous thick shake or shake based fast food joint is Shake Shack, and the biggest selling item is actually the burger. So he's thinking about it and he's going to probably introduce it in the second go. Now the third innovation which he has talked about is the value chain based one. So going backwards. So what is a thick shake made of? It's made of ice cream. So he has actually got into production of ice cream, and he has taken charge. Instead of buying it from somebody else earlier, now he has gone back and he's making his own ice cream. Also gives him higher control on his product. All these did not take place in one go. All these were sequential. About 3 to 4 months of experimentation on each of these. So next one, as I said, was geographical. There are 2 phases to this. One is the large cities, Bangalore and Bombay. The next phase is he also wants to go into the smaller places, because his real growth, if he wants to hit 200 outlets, which is his aim in another 4 years' time, then he'll have to see whether there is a market for this in Warangal, in Nellore. So that is exactly what he's doing. His next outlet is coming up in Nellore, which is going to be next month, and he'll see what exactly is the sales from a place like that. There are some operational challenges. Unless there are 3 outlets in a geographical location, it becomes difficult to service those outlets. So it becomes a logistical nightmare, but he's willing to take it on. He's trying to see if there's some way he can work it out. There is yet one more thing which he's trying out, again in terms of channels. There are 30 new, 30 stations coming up in the new metro coming up in Hyderabad. So he's applied for a shop in every one of those metro stations. So he wants to see if that much of a reach can actually be maintained by this. I have my doubts. He also has his doubts, but let's see how it goes. One more thing that he has started off on is now he has an ice cream plant. So why not look at different kinds of products? So diversified, not exactly health, but he went into ice creams itself. So now he has a store of Godroy's ice creams. So Godroy's ice creams is basically, many of you who have gone to Hyderabad would have seen, of course it exists in the rest of the world also, but for some reason in Hyderabad they are extremely fond of it. You have these stone slabs and they chop up the ice cream and mix it on top of it. So there's a little more there than elsewhere. So that is the concept, and he has 3 stores over there, and 2 are operating under franchising model, 1 is being operated by him. So he's trying out these things. So every 3 months he tried out something. The reason he was able to do it on such an accelerated way is he took on a partner. He said that I don't have enough bandwidth. I'll take on a partner whose only job will be to try out these things. Later on, we'll consolidate it. So you have to make sure that you give the right resources. He probably had the money to try out these things. These are not very capital intensive, all that he was doing. But he also needed that bandwidth, and he personally didn't have that bandwidth. So he took on a partner. Now there are 2 partners, and they are operating this. Also, he hired somebody at the top management, not as a partner, but as an employee, because again, they needed that extra bandwidth. So you have to make those investments in case you are planning on trying out things. But he has been extremely quick in discarding things which don't work out. That is one of the things which you have to understand, that this model needs you to react quickly to the knowledge that you have gained. So cookies rejected within 2 months. Tried out a few variations, it's not working, let me not do it, I'll come back to this later. There are other experiments that I need to carry out also. New cities, very quickly implemented, identified people, put them in place, measures it almost on an hour-to-hour basis. Delivery channels, link up with Food Panda, Zomato. He has a full check on exactly what is going on that front. So you have to experiment on a regular basis if you want to take the business forward. That is one of the major things which I wanted to put down over here. Select 1 or 2 of the opportunities that you want to take forward. Don't do all of those at one go. Prioritized based on the opportunity you see, fit with your capabilities, and the kind of resources needed to work on those opportunities. These are the three criteria you use to prioritize the opportunities that you have in front of you. But what is appropriate for you, you're going to find out only once you implement it. And so that is why you should do it at a small scale. The lesson over here is that make any of these experiments at a very small scale, so that once you can learn from it, then only you can expand to a larger scale. And where do you learn what needs to be done? When you see what others are doing around you. So it's not necessarily just from Cafe Coffee Day that he learns. He can learn from Moti Mahal also, which is again food service, maybe not in the exact same sector. And actually no reason why he shouldn't be learning from the educational services also. What Ashoka University might be doing in terms of customer engagement might be as relevant to them as what Moti Mahal or McDonald's is doing. So you have to learn from across. Whatever practices are good, whether it is your own industry or elsewhere, you're more likely to find workable examples within your own industry. So that's the good thing. So that's why it's good to have a look at your own industry. Implement it in a small way, so you find out whether that's appropriate for you or not. You know, for example, we had this conversation later that franchisee model may not work. It's a huge challenge. The challenges are very different, and thankfully not too many people from Franchise India are here right now. So what I'm saying is Cafe Coffee Day and Barista. Traditionally, the reason which is attributed to the success of Cafe Coffee Day over that of Barista was operating on a franchisee basis. Cafe Coffee Day operated on a fully owned outlet, and that was one of the major reasons why they were able to keep the quality parameters in place. So there was a learning over there, but he thought that franchisee is this big opportunity. There are a lot of other people in the industry operating in that front, so why not I try that out? And that's very valid. So he tried out. The results of the you can say experiment are not yet conclusive, but at least he has an indication that it's not an unqualified success and he should go for it. Okay, any questions, any other questions?
We basically define the time frame of experimentation. Let's say particular experiment may work at a particular time and may be failure at another time.
Okay.
So taking decisions on that, we should be able to have a frame, no, during this.
Yep. So for example, if you look at this particular example and the idea about the franchising, it did not work. But there is a feeling that it did not work because the timing may not have been right. So let us give it some more time. In some cases, for example, the cookies, it did not work. That's it. They knew it's not going to work. Somebody is going to go in over there and have a thick shake, usually doesn't have the space to even put in a little bit of supari at the end of it, right? So you can have somebody coming in for a thick shake or a burger. You'll never have somebody coming in for both. You're looking at about 650 calories. So it's very unlikely that you'll have both of those things being consumed at the same time. So that is why the cookies did not work. Nobody had time or space for the cookie. So it is very clear that that experiment did not do well. So you have to give different time frames to experiments and also look at why they failed. Important is to have your measures in place. What is success? What is a maybe? What is a failure? Sales of 10 a day is probably a failure. Sales of 30 to 80 might be okay, but let's see. Sales of 200 plus a day is a success. So you have to look at exactly what is appropriate for that circumstance.
Mainly in the starter stages, the approaches vary on the promotional or marketing rather. So any startup basically, it's not about product diversification, it's not about introducing new things, it's majorly what are the approaches to reach various marketplaces.
Yep.
And that time it becomes very trickier to decide, you know. So example, sometimes, let's say if I take my own example, at a time we tried this paper advertisements, you know, TOI, like expense was huge, like 54,000 rupees per ad, and we thought it will work. And it didn't work, your budgets are also exhausted, and it didn't work.
Yep.
At the same time, the next year we tried with some other channels, it worked very well just by spending 10 to 15% of what our actual spend was.
Okay.
But then that time frame is, you know, is very difficult to decide on how long you can sustain. This is marketing. One is the marketing initially.
Absolutely.
Later on it goes on to different levels, like trying out different territories.
And marketing also, it's very easy to track what you are doing in terms of what is the return that is coming on that. So here again, the smaller experiment was on the marketing mix itself and the promotional mix more than the marketing mix. So what happened was they did try out outdoor, did not work. They tried out newspaper, that did not work. What is working extremely well for them is social media. And within social media, Twitter is not working for them. Facebook is doing very well, Pinterest is doing well enough, Instagram is doing extremely well. So within marketing, they looked at social media, and within social media, they looked at a few vehicles which have been doing extremely well for them. So that experimentation obviously again is something that needs to be put in place. A research-based approach still is based on assumptions and may not work out. Whereas a lean approach is a little closer to the truth. So that way the chances of it working out are much more. And in most cases, you're right, the research itself is going to be less expensive than trying it out. But the chances of success get so well defined as a result of the lean approach that it makes more sense to go in for this than not. These are approaches, and people can follow the other approach also. But it seems that it is yielding results. Because also if you look at the organization at that point of time is attuned to learning what is working, what is not. So it sort of invigorates the organization in terms of if you're doing it a research-based one, then it's probably a third party doing the research for you, or even if you're involved, your involvement is very limited. So much of the learning of what works and what does not work does not transmit well within the startup organization also. Here in this case, there is a template which gets established as a result of your lean approach experimentation. Broadly, three things that you have to look at. One is strategy, the other is people, and the other is execution. There are a lot of things one has to look at, but let's broadly point out what are the things one has to look at. As far as strategy is concerned, there is emphasis on the old as well as emphasis on the new. You have to figure out what level of emphasis you're going to give to the new. Certain amount of resources, maybe somebody in the top management, maybe a certain amount of money. So you have to be clear about what are the resources being given to the new as opposed to the resources which are being given to the old. The other thing is the goal setting. What are the timelines? What are the milestones that are important? What are the things that people are looking out for when they're looking at the success or the failure of that particular endeavor? Then, of course, you have to look at competitive responses. You have competitors who are going to do certain things because you are not operating in a vacuum. The old saying that the competitor is going to be the one who is going to be the most important factor in the market research is very true over here. How does your offering stand up to the reaction from the competitor is something you have to look at. Risk, various elements of risk, you really don't know what is going to be risky. You have to figure out whether you have managed to mitigate risk to the extent possible or not. So strategy wise, these are the important things. Then the people wise, most startups have one guy, at most two guys who are at the helm of affairs. One of them has to drive all new initiatives. So if it is experimentation that you're doing with an MVP that you're moving with a lean philosophy, even though it is small and insignificant compared to the rest of your operations, it has to be front and center for at least one of the founders. So that is extremely important. That's probably one of the most important things. Expertise has to be allocated. That goes without saying. We all know the challenges of making that happen, so I'll not get into that. It's not as easily done as I'm saying over here. One of the biggest problems that startups face is getting the right expertise in place. We were discussing some of the strategies. We can probably have a further discussion on that also. Chain of command has to be established, and the bottom one, which is something which very strangely entrepreneurs will forget to implement. If you are doing a lean-based experimentation, make sure that there is individual autonomy. Up to almost the field level, the frontline level, you have to give individual autonomy. The chain of command will look after the reporting, but unless the person in the field is encouraged to take decisions on their own, you are not going to be able to have successful experimentation going on. Again, going back to the example of thick shake factory, one person in charge of each of the outlets. For safety purposes, there is a live feed from that outlet going on. More to do with physical safety, there might be law and order situations and everything. That's why there's a live feed. But that is all the control they have. At the end of the day, there's accounting. If the person behind the counter wants to give a thick shake free to somebody, they are more than empowered to do so. Go give it. If you find a customer you like, give. If you find a customer who is difficult, don't charge them. Make sure that they go over with a memorable experience, even if they come in with a bad mindset over there. That is somebody who has not passed class 10. necessarily the person who's serving has not passed class 10. So that is the level of empowerment I'm talking about over here. So you have to give that level of empowerment even at that level, the frontline level, if you want to successfully implement lean methodology. Pricing is always the one thing which all entrepreneurs would want to try on first go, but they have to limit the extent to which they try it out. So there are few things which have been tried and few things which have been no-go. For example, buy one, get one free was never allowed in these premises. Going up and down on the prices, that was fine. There are different buckets for different things. They're tried out with 3 different sizes. So those who want to go and spend $60 can actually go and have a product over there also. That didn't work out very well. So you have a minimum now of about 70 that you end up spending with on a thick shake. So you had a little bit of price experimentation which was done. Prices itself of the individual products in this case were not changed, but I think it's a good idea to have price experimentation on that. And always, price is a number, is the easiest thing to change. One should resist the temptation of doing it very often, but I think one should give in to temptation and do it every once in a while. That I think is extremely valid over here. Resources are always at a premium. Resources don't get allocated. So in case you want to implement something and you're very serious about the results you're going to get, make sure that the right resources are allocated. Financial, people also, can be other resources. For example, you might need licenses. Make sure that those licenses have been procured at the right time. It's always good to talk about something at a very high strategic level, but you have to boil it down to an operational sheet where there's a checklist of what needs to be done and by what date and how it needs to be done. Make sure that list is there. Most of the implementation issues are to do with tactics, not with strategy. So broadly, I think that answers your question in terms of what are the major things that need to be done when you're implementing the lean philosophy. Okay, we'll take a half-minute break and we'll get back to Blue Ocean Strategy. In this small break of 2-3 minutes, what I would like you to do is have a look at your list, the number of opportunities that you have. Some of you have more and some of you have less. Build up a priority list. So you have 3 criteria with you. One is alignment with your objectives. Second is ease of implementation. And third is alignment with your core competencies or other competencies that you have mentioned over here.